Oh, yeah, that's in a casura. Chamala. Shuyada. Sanga Pep Kanga. Oh, the Gabeton is just without Tony. Not to tell us.
So welcoming all the efforts that you put into arranging this, I what do I say? Extend you my greetings.
Yeah. This one. Oh yeah. Tango delia di Karsure. Padon Dawaja Umajubana Sondoa. Kanzi Rawan Juji Tunabas. Kanzi Rawan Juji Tunaba. Getting dear Dan Zimber Machina. Yansar Lumeshan Jujura Telechin Kangalon use. Bandangarazu Chutuvala Del Tunjin Jor Miluto Beckham de la Siora. Rawade Sendisam by Kawashima Tanda Kandistus and Susu Rawan Juris. And then Rawa Yubanashiko Legachisa Yulungina Timbeyuna never is. Kanzirawanji to never. Getting dear than Zimbar Machine or the deck of Dilia Rani Sendichibu Maimba Kawashima Sole Tarwa. The legend then a koala Tarwa. The legend of Sanji Koba Tobe Tapshing ever to Chebure Sungta. What is it?
So the glorious Chandrakirti said, "Now I have independence in favorable conditions. If I do not take full advantage of this time, I will plunge into the abyss and fall under the control of others. Who will lift me out?" Here, to have independence and favorable conditions means that we have the leisure and the opportunity to practice the teachings. We have all the favorable conditions assembled in order to do that. Now we have to take advantage to practice for the purpose of either to attain a favorable rebirth as a human or a deity, or to free ourselves from cyclic existence, or to attain the high state of the omniscience of a Buddha.
Oh yeah. Get it. Yansar Louis Shawan Jugura, Telechin Kangalon, Josung. Oh, Sendichi Buche. Anikawangama ko Miki Shanatse, Miki Chusatendele, Miki Amanta Chusani, Joachima de Nason, La Longsona, young sustain Yason, the tender of Shikison, Sungara. And it teleran Chiso, Kagachi and Nuga Yomarese. Tiduka Chetuya Yomar, Tandakarin the Chetugre, take up the Leche Gure Sungda.
So I'll fall into the abyss and come under the control of others. Who will lift me out? To fall into the abyss here means to that if you engage only in the non-virtuous deeds, the 10 non-virtuous deeds for the most part, then as a result of that you will be reborn into the abyss. That means the abyss of the 3 unfavorable rebirths, either as a hell being, a hungry ghost, or a animal. And what can you do about it then? You can't do much about it then. You have the conditions to do something about that now. Don't do so.
Oh yeah. No, the Dukas would have. That Jubure Sunga, that to be a Dilanga Nambachavina, Kibuchung Dings, Chambusungi, Tanda to be Yora. Oh, the Indu Takota, Toma Mevan Sabe, Shalat Savalia, Shakbache, Sendilia, Chinuki, Lunga Yusum Yukonea, Miki was Shalat, Miki was Chupa, Kawachu Tubayana. I got Joachima Ladamiko to touch Sarah. Oh, Tindel Ladamiko, Bar Macheva Tobachene, Teza Maimba. And given during the Shina, Nesungi Tungele Tarachibu Baiba, Lada Mele Kianako, Lada Numobeshawa, do your Shenjetilla, and Dungaji Ranshil Mebe, Qua Dungaji Ranshim Tone, Rala Rawan Meba, Kichi Gube, and Kabakora Yena, Dungaji Ranshim, Teletarbechedo, Tarbechu Toka. Oh, teach you doing it, Medabada, Dunga, the Toa Damela Sobacom Gures, Tisunguta.
Then, so if you say what is, how do we make our life meaningful, then we can make it meaningful according to the practices of for a person of either we say small capacity, medium capacity, or great capacity. And for a person of small capacity, the initial level of practice then is to engage in confessing former non-virtuous actions, and then to adopt virtuous actions that tend by avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions, and cultivating the 10 virtuous actions. Then, as a result of this, you would be reborn into a fortunate life, or fortunate rebirth. Then at the level of at the next level, when you reach the, say, intermediate level of a person of medium capacity, then you see that having a life, a fortunate rebirth, is well, if you've set up a series of you can see that it's good to have a series of fortunate rebirths, but then the rebirth in itself is not what do you say, not stable, so that you're under the influence or other power of your former actions and your afflictive emotions. So once we're under that, then there can be no what do you say, freedom from suffering. So then at this level, when the person of medium capacity then would engage in meditation on impermanence and suffering and selflessness, and then in this way seek to be free of cyclic, what are we going to call it, samsara, or cyclic existence.
Yeah. Oh, dani dejelia kibuchimbogi samlo lamina. Ine rachibu koya dungele tarba chibu samlutana. Ane marumbare. Rangi tsendi pamanye nyendele soba teta tsumbe. Kyawa thoma medu simje tamje. Dungele treve pama juve simje tamje dungele treve tablet zongo gure. Oh, te tanda ranglia nuba mendo. Tendi rang kyan kunse yonde kundengi. Sanje tabda shirab niga sangbe chatan shenyongi chanyiga tarshimbe sanje yukoban topna ane simjenle pemba bagdu meba tup gure samne deche doene chanju chodu samge ne chimba chudim sebala sobala paru chimba tula loba de kibu chimbe chora.
Then for a person of great capacity, the highest level of practice, one, or we could say the highest level of spiritual development, then one sees that it's not enough just to pursue one's own interest, but sees that all living beings, that that one can pursue the purpose or the aim, fulfilling the aims of all living beings, and so you then turn your attention towards all living beings and see that they have only been our own close relative or our mother since beginningless time, all of them. And then you seek to help them to be freed from their suffering or freed from cyclic existence. Then, at that time, you realize that you don't have the ability to free all living beings. So then you see that the Buddha, a fully enlightened Buddha, someone who has brought wisdom and compassion to, or wisdom and goodness to perfection, has this ability to free all living beings. So then, from their suffering. So then you seek to attain Buddhahood, and in this way, then you develop what's known as the altruistic spirit of enlightenment, or the mind of awakening, and then engage in the perfections, the six perfections of ethical, generosity, ethical conduct, and so forth.
Oh yeah. Oh, that and that got so isn't me so that they could tattoo me de Abbey Shanchebe, Chanju some give a con the Sanji Kovato Vache, Sambachera. Oh, Deliatine, Abbey Shancheba Mana and Jing Delia, and the Tacho and Shanjo Meva, Nyambekone, and it Chambatsa was also at the Oh, that Abbey Shan, Tacho Shanjo Nyam took Manaya, and Rangicho. The Shanji show you now, Rangi Ranchogi, Tunda Trubata, Kangase, Tundal, Shan Litsawach and the Digmaris, that it should be Maras number Kangachi.
So then, if we can't put others before ourselves, then we can seek our. What do you say? If you can't transform your orientation from only thinking of being preoccupied with yourself and replace that with being preoccupied with others, and then you seek to at least what do you say? Equalize make your, what do you say? I'm trying to look for a word, sorry. Equalizing, or having no bias of your, of self and other, means you're trying to make them have a sense of equanimity, so that you're not just pursuing where others' interests and your own interests are just the same. And then, if you can't do that, then you seek to your own interests in terms of trying to find trying to avoid harming others, and whatever you can do to practice the what do you say, non-harm or non-violence.
Yes, oh yeah. Oh, the Indu Takasura, Garazu, Chitanko, Chuche, Rimbamangu, Tandangarazo, Tambu, so Chadi, Mikiwa, Chambata Sevacone, Milunga Yusum Jukone, Niri Messinalia, Shala Sawapang, Chinuki Pamba Tuvieti, Jangiina, and the Joshimang Magic had a milkiata, Shadow, Cutirated, the Cashambre, Tanda Chat. Titoliani, Giovanni Kivacutis, Tarbato, and Yomochunta, Tavishanchi, Vichanju, some Shambang, some Shuchurtadi, Jangora.
So, for us, then, the practice of doing whatever we can to avoid harming others, and to do what we can, and also do what we can to help others, is our primary practice. Then, if we add to that practice that helps us to have a kind of impartiality towards those who we associate with ourselves, and those who we feel as being other than ourselves, then and then add to that where we're trying to exchange our self-orientation and other orientation, so that we're oriented towards others. If we add those practices, then that's the way we can best practice the Buddha's teaching.
Oh yeah, Mikiwa Chupang, Kiwachu to be Chudim Dira, Mikiwa Chupang be Chudim de, Chita be Chunju, the Chunju Mare, King Razul, and the Geshe Yeshe Thabkhe Tiora. Saniba comes to Chudim Parjing in Yamni Chela, what Topsunguda, Saniba, Satambuniba Yora, Chudim Parjing in Yamni Chela, what Topsundi, Miki Chupang be Chudim Ye. Namni chela wa top songudwa. So sanji ba sumba to zule mikiwa chupa kiwa chutu yetele changudwa. Ti nale nyamli mabu de ora. Ti nima ni re mita ndondi chidu. Ti samlu tangbe na ni nyiri nalia soju pangba da chi mikiwa tedati pangbe phen togudwa. Pangbe samlu te yana. Pangbe sebe de mena mi se mena mi sebe soju pangbe phen togake yamara. Ti ngamzu jamdu chidu. Sanje ni jamdu la sumde se sanje le japsu chole japsu chidu. Ki chungwe ni mikiwa chupa be shodu nge chigi isi yara. O ti lamna ni nima ti ringa shenla tsawa ma je mikiwa chu pangbe phen togudwa. O tende samlu chidani shu chiru shenla chamba da tsawa pangba shu chiru ndone satangbu niwa ya lepti yara. O ti la.
So in general, then, we tend to think of the abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds as kind of a, I don't know, insignificant practice or small practice or something like that. So then, that's not true. For us, it's the most important practice. Even when we achieve the first level, second level, third level of the noble being or noble ones, or Aryas. At that level, the practice of the 10 non-virtuous deeds is sort of brought to its highest level. So it's a very important practice at that level. So then we should think of the avoiding or abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds as something that is very important to us to practice now, and to develop that. What do you say? To not harm, as developing non-harm as something that we will be practicing until we reach those higher levels of practice.
Sanyiba Sanyiba kapsu chutin parjingi nyamni chela wa top set migi chubungi chutin pangbal sigris.
Say Sanyiba, then at the second level of the 10 levels of the Bodhisattva practice, then that's when you're bringing the perfection of ethical discipline to its highest level, or to perfection. Yeah.
Oh yeah, tende ko migi wa chupangbe. So then you have
to think of that's the practice of a person at that level. So it's very important for me to practice.
Oh, Geshe Yeshe Milia Geshe Yeshe Medua, Chamachig Medua, Sixubulag Medua, Tanda maybe Chagdan Geshe Yung Medua, Titagiora. Any Luigi Kone Socheg Medua, Socheme, Sochu Machimbaling Medua, Loyan Chig Medua, some. Tagnashi, me, nor Chala, Napsim Chig Medua, Nelsim Chig Medua, Napsim Nepsin Logda. Legum de me, Kiwanga met and some locomotive, some nearing and some lotadu. Shella Tsevakon, Shella Nugri, some Chamba Tsevakon, this some lotadu, and Shambang a some lotadu, shook shadow to Yara. And the Gyosh and the Kanga the appel to Yare. Shoot him the sheens at Yerba. Get on any given drink, give Chimbukanga Lamganga, things a Kanga Pegora.
So then if we think, oh, am I telling a lie? Am I engaging in divisive speech? Am I is my speech being offensive or harmful? Is my speech senseless? And then, or we're constantly examining also our physical actions and saying, am I engaging in killing or stealing or some form of sexual misconduct? Or then mentally, am I wanting others things? Am I engaging in some kind of covetousness or malice or wrong views? If you're constantly watching over your mind in this way, then you will avoid any kind of harm to others. And so then, if you don't avoid harming, then there's no, and then then how can you help, really? So one really has to have a firm sense of not harming others.
No, yeah. Tadi in this the share the Karishegurasana. Oh, Shigaba Shegura. Shigaba deco so data, Kibu Chambota, Kibu Dinda, Kibu Chambe, Sheko and Sira.
So then the topic that we're going to be discussing or learning about today is the 400 verses written by Aryadeva. And all these teachings are then for persons of great capacity or persons of medium capacity.
Shijabadi Zababode Babala Kodenico single Gebu Sechi Sondoa Gebu Sechi and Kesi Masunche Rabduchon, Lojo Pe, Gombulu Lomache, or Tendedoa.
Gilbert said, Pabella Gilbert said,
oh, the single Altumbe Sedoa, Gebu said, yes. And it gave Jesse Masunche, you shall Rabduchon, Java Lojo to a pen, Gombulu Lomache, and Gombulu Lomesora.
Sing it because Payul de Sri Lanka, the best, Sri.
Sri Lanka in Sigala, it was Silon Sidwa. Tensa district, Malaysia, they say,
anyway, I'm not quite clear on where that is geographically, but in southern India, Aryadeva was born as the son of a prince, a royal prince, and he renounced his royal lineage and became a monastic, and then found his teacher, his guru, Nagarjuna.
Oh, this way.
Yes, that is.
Oh, yeah, that in that. Oh, sending Gombolu de. The Peja de Carit, that's all, isn't it? She's in the combat, so Condisora. Shirabji Paru to Chimbendo, Tombani Tembendo, Combajalia, Gombulu to the Sanjay Lung Dembare. Oh, tin Tembanation Gombulu to Sawa Shirab some Sawa Shirab Lasoba, Umarik to Sambara. Oh, dear Deva Certaliane, Korang de Shijabat Sambiora, so Umasawa Shirab Lasoba, Drebich.
So this book was Nagarjuna was prophesied by the Buddha to sort of elucidate the Buddha's teachings on wisdom. So he wrote fundamental wisdom and the various the 6 collections of reasoning and so forth. So this 400 verses on the middle way is intended as a commentary for those wisdom treatises written by Nagarjuna. Dandrisa.
That's right. Oh yeah, taking this castle, so Sawashirab Devache. Tene de Kasuya. Oh, Tene Sawashirab dan, this is Nigga Capsule. Shanjene Rangwine Trubadan, Tatakbadan, Chitended Deva to Kapa Mambuara. Oh, this year we had the Akashe. Oh, the Shunchimbo to the Kangashan, La Kapa, so Shigiamato, Yamletso Maris, and Yamletso, she had the Shunshan to Yabana, Tender Sambu, Marisonga, Sogaba, Caresane, Kakachi Guadi, Penada, Taxiraja, Dio Maris, the Chiribazu, Taxiraja, Dioris, Yebe, you sent in the race, you say Shagiora. Or did you say under Mari, did the Mari, did the race, Asuko, Shakura. Did share Madako, Kabazo, Shenda, Luca, so Chen Sampa Marwa. Or this Sungudwa, Kasure, Umajuaka Sungudwa. Tenjule, Sola Chak Besher Manzes. Tenjule Chebache, the Sabatu, Shenda Pamjura, get in the to Marisera. Namrich in the Tinijas, number Joe, Lamone, the Carina, Tihaguet and Dalapazu, to Lichigiora. Tisha design, Dimari, the rest is Shakura. Member did you send, maybe you send Karim, but you make you send Karate, to say Hakone, or that the race I remember to some social touch Yagura. Nangbalia, Turbata, Samba, Comba Sumyoda. The Samba said the social Samlutane, and then Geshe Yeshe and the Ishi Shagura. Did Dalia, Riba Samlutan, Madung Marwa. Or did Maduko, Subato, Shebeshum Mares, Tiagora, that's all.
So then, you can think of it as being primarily a commentary on the fundamental treatise on the middle way, or fundamental wisdom. There's many translations of that. Zawashera Mulya Madhyamaka Karakas, right? So people say then, oh, all these books on like that on wisdom, they're just for refuting others' positions. They're kind of debate texts or something like that, just for refuting others' positions. Then it really, this is not really Buddhist practice. We need something to practice the Buddha's teachings. And then Je Tsongkhapa makes a point that this is not what the purpose of these texts are. You have well, we study, reflect, and then meditate on the teachings. If in order to there are many presentations of philosophy by non-Buddhists that present a self that's permanent, unitary, and independent. Then each of their assertions has to be refuted one by one, and in refuting that, then what is being established is what you have to use the kind of logic that refutes that in order to develop the wisdom that then knows the lack or the non-existence of such kinds of that kind of a self that's being, asserted. So we have to think of these texts as not just being for the sake of, debate or something like that, but as the way to develop wisdom.
This one? Oh, yeah. Oh, this is the Ducarsora. Oh, yeah, teacher. That and then I'll delia during the shade. Rabji Tambu Niba Sumba Shiva Shidira. Oh, yeah. Rabji Tambu de Karishegurasina, Medaba Shegdoa, Chua Medabal, some Medaba Shegdoa. Rabji Niba Digi, and Medaba Dunga Shegdoa. Sumba Digi, Misawa sound Shega, and the Dame by Shitty Shegdoa.
So we're going to be covering the first 4 chapters. The first chapter then is about impermanence. The second chapter is about suffering. The third chapter is about impurity, and the fourth chapter is about selflessness. So then following that, then it discusses how to develop the altruistic spirit of enlightenment. And then there's also refutations of such positions as permanent time and permanent self and so forth. So if you, this first chapter, if you you have to put in practice well or understand, because that it forms the basis for understanding these the middle way.
Oh yeah. This shit the Shambura, Nazo Sanje Jumde, the church on the Tunga Babi Dembas, Tambu Tunga Dembasora. Oh, this one did think some time comes at del Carson Resene, Meda Dunga Tonga Dame Bas, Tisungutoa.
This is we can see how important this is from the fact that the Buddha first taught the noble truth of suffering, and then the 4 characteristics within that truth of suffering, or the 4 features of that truth of suffering, are just these: impermanence, suffering, impurity, and selflessness. Instead of impurity, instead of impurity, it's emptiness. They do, selflessness and emptiness.
Tanda dile chue tamje su pungbunga del kogyara. Suji pungbusu su gangan do shagara. Ela sora shi namshi chen sora dushin duchis. Su nale tati ro rikja gangan dura. Duje tamje dura. Di pungbunga la sokba teni dunga tembare se. Diga samlutaya karta orsne medaba dunga tonga tameshi de kongres kolo tambu kap songyara. Oh yeah. Di nashin di kap so ti that is
right. So when the Buddha taught the first of the noble truth of suffering, then he was saying that the 5 aggregates, and the 5 aggregates here, like form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. These all. In form, you can include all the objects of the senses. So then, it includes everything, and then he's saying that these then have these features of being impermanent, giving rise to suffering. Maybe we can think of, or sometimes translated as miserable, but I don't know if that works. So then empty, and then selfless. Okay.
Charge chimbu dawa charge shisigdwa odele duje tunji medawa sanje dundunga chodam je tongshi tameba sangelenda ba shishikewa shugdwa.
Then also we can see this within the four seals of the four seals. Okay, the four seals that certify a teaching as being Buddhist. You have all composed phenomena are impermanent. All contaminated. Then all contaminated things are suffering or miserable. All phenomena are selfless, and then the nirvana is empty. Deva, it's emptiness and bliss.
So the midabada dungewada mizawada dame ba shishegiwara o sheguya de karesne ngarazulia nyamo da orba tezo nyamo ramenda keada mikiwen ramenda yo samade midabala takbar jimba dungewala dewar jimba dame bala mizawala tsawar jimba dame bala tayeban jimba ti lodo dile tene kyon kanga yongwara ti kanga kyon kanga meva shene tane tharbada sanjeji salia trebar shebalya ngarazo namdo shibiti ma chur tang nyor tang goyara di tondala ne medaba kom goyare dejetani medaba sakjetam je dunga chotam je dame ba shero di kom goyara meda dunga tong dame shi de kom goyara di ke shibishene sheyora.
So then these four topics of the first four chapters are where we're misconceiving things as being permanent. Then to oppose that, we have to cultivate a view of impermanence. And then we misconceive things as being, sources of happiness, and therefore we have to perceive things as, or understand things as being miserable or sources of suffering, maybe we could say. And then we misperceive things as being pure, and to oppose that, we see them as being impure, and we misconceive things as having a self, and so then we have to cultivate a view that sees things as being selfless.
Oh yeah, tatambo ngaju takban jinda ngaraji julia ti logdo shide ngaju yora minda bala takban jimba sete chede su pichilo su inada soso inada kanga duje sama tamje gyudan kyan ten ki yora gyudan kyan ten ki za gyudan kyan ki tanda jigi yora orede ngaraji de samge yomare ina soso ri samna nga Nimane yu, tanda yu de mama bala tengen yin sam. Du jinsi sila, nga ma de tanda yu batabu, tanda de ngema yu batabu, tanda nga de, tanda degre, konda degre, tende samgitwa. Nga me duje, chimben duje tu kanga ko keji jigi yora. Yun di degi yor mado. Nga ju di samgi yomar, ko dubandu usma, dende jen ro denge reche, chik di samgitwa. Udili tangzin si yora.
Dangzin.
Dangzin medabala takwan sembas ram medabare takwan singyore nyejin jigde medabare takwan singyore cha nye yidwa sugda tero rekja kanga 당부 협의대 장에 땡겨를 저기도 뒤 삼로도 숙천부 유도네 nyamo kyo mangpo shunguyara. Tanda rang sambuchi deyo sam jigi deyo samna namdo mangpochi ko rang shitndura shingudwa.
So in the case of seeing things as this misconception, we all have these four misconceptions, and we're under the influence of these four misconceptions. We can see it in terms of permanence or staticness. We could also use that term, where we see things as being static, that and whether it's well, in fact, everything is these collections of causes and conditions that are going through, or they're in a state of flux. They're never staying the same. That's the way things are. But instead of that, we see them as being static, and so then we can see how this works in terms of ourself. For instance, it's very clear. We're sort of thinking, well, I'm the same person as I was previously, and the person I am now is also going to continue to be, exist in the same way into the future. And this problem, that kind of thought then is what we call the conception of permanence or staticness, if you will. And based on this, then we create a lot of afflictions, or the mental afflictions, or the emotional afflictions, or what other people call them disturbing thoughts and emotions and so forth. Or negative emotions and thoughts. Or there are many different translations. What I use is the word afflictions. So then, based on these, on that kind of a misconception of things as being static or permanent, then we have give rise to the afflictions.
Oh yeah, that done that. 규단 깽기 깨고라 뭐 간가 규단 깽기 깨고 요도 신이 나라 매도이 나라 뭐란 좀 미선 버시 땡게 있는데 로이 나라 간가 규단 깽을 때는 거 깨고요라 규단 깽을 때는 깨도 규단 깽을 때는 쉬고요라 공어 등에 대해 규단 깽 사다 주다 매다 줘다 지다다 대도 거 야부지 되고요라 매도를 지나 사다 주다 신주와 대해서 거 용부지 야부지 되고도 깨지 리아기기 제거로 말도 깨사를 되게요 말아. 나라서 선보시 되게요라. 미지 되게요라. 치사 주멜롱 중앙요라 나게 때네 류기 차세 망보요 강가 내가 전에 단다 야수 선보시 되게요라. 칼라사고도 추통고도 우당고도 시부 제고도 매대면도 그 단다 규대 쟁이야 깨고요라. 이 인데 그 메다바마도 그 지기 제거로 말도 깨사를 깨먹고 돼요 말아. 대인데 그 칭어보다 가리에나 그 교단 쟁기야 깨고도 아니 메다바라 깨지 마도 대고 말아 그 준두군도 그랬어요라. 다네시 다데 티레스. 나가라서 디삼기요 말아 그 상해에서 계세 디른도 땡게를 삼고도 와. 그 gün데 잡아오지 되기 위해서 되게 아주 노력해라. 마도 꼭 계세 단도 되게 말아. 나중에만 깨버도 보고 춘주지어라. 그 단다 가봐 되 그래. 단다 예버등에만 가봐요. 그랬더니 자가고 소빈겨 전대징에만 요구를 요 말아. 어디서.
So then we have this. For anything to be produced, there has to be a number of causes and conditions that come together and then give rise to that object, whatever it might be. And but then once it's produced, It's not like it's going to stay. Okay, it just it goes through a constant process of change, and it's in a constant state of flux. And then so once it is produced, like say for instance a tree or a flower, so the flower grows and it blossoms, and the plant grows, the flower blossoms, and then it needs constant production in order to continue. And so you have to have good soil, you have to have water, you have to have warmth and so forth. It needs it's in a constant state of being produced over and over again. You can think of it that way. And so then we tend to think of us, well, whether it's an external phenomena is dependent upon the elements of earth, such earth, water, air, and warmth or fire, you can say. And internally, we're the same way. Our bodies then are dependent upon these, and we tend to think of ourselves not in this way. We don't think that we're dependent upon on all these causes and conditions constantly and constantly changing. We tend to think of ourselves as today's person was the same as yesterday's person, and then I will be here in the tomorrow or in the future. So that what we're doing is that we're seeing there is a continuity, but we're mistaking that continuity for some kind of a permanent or staticness, and there's none of that kind of staticness. Well,
oh yeah, darling, I just look at them with the man doing shagilla. Man did talk me do go to share my watch. Show look at them with the loshana. No, I show look at them with the caressna, Joshua Raswa. That show a choose to turn back on the Sudo, and would show me that was Shagora. Show a choose to turn back on it, and the Talam Latungo raised the Shagdoa. So I choose to turn back on it, and then Talam Latumba, Power Becone, Tabelam Tobishi to Tungo race, Kulmashigdoa. Din Dordendere. Pabelam Drubala, Tumba Cage, it's all there. Palam Drubala, take it all the Carasana. Shola Michi Yambe. Chinjiloki Londini in Besse, Yanda and the show Metabasam ne Pagbelam Drubala, Somber Jago des, Decomna, Nesoja, Kunduchula wishes. So Metaba de Abucona, and it don't head at all down with the Kunduchula with this.
So here, if we go to the text, we have to get to covering these verses. So here, the first verse is, you can see on, I don't know if everybody has a book, but on page 305 you can see that what is being covered here in the first verse is a brief explanation urging conscientious effort on the path to liberation by being mindful of death. And if we read then on page 65, the main obstacle to generating effort to gain the paths of the exalted, which I was translating as the noble ones, is the erroneous idea or misconception that what must die will not die. Therefore, by repeatedly thinking about death and impermanence, one should strive to attain these paths. That's the paths of the exalted ones. For through familiarity with this, it will be easy to understand suffering and so forth as well. The other, correct, what are we going to call them? The correct views of that oppose the three other erroneous ideas.
This oh yeah, that Kangla Jigden Sumga Sigdwa. Oh, Tenekan Soda. Mobile Dember Zimbe comes from the Chimale Matricians and Garazu Sigura. Mobile Tada Shell Dember Rubanze. And it Dewange Eneka Soda. Nemo Chatangi want to Sone. Let an Yumubange Chuale Mandeva Kansa Garazu Tabusigura. Touch on but a Sangitus membership. Kangla Ase. Tidavi Kansa Kanglas. Jigden Sumga Dase. Jigden Sum Siduzako. Keji injection. And Nimbe can jig by Yimbe. Pumbunga with the Jigdens. Sudan, Sora, Dushin Dushila Soba. Pumbunga or Koya. Oh, those Keji injection. Nimbe can jig by the Temba in Jigdens. Till and then gang Kansala Soba Nazukanga Sigora. Kanglan Jigden. Sumga Das and Jigden Sum Sidu. So, Sadin Salas and Endure, Dongam Sungam Sung may become Sumbulas. Deva to Chilamna.
So then, if we read the verse here, if those whose Lord is death himself, ruler of the three worlds, without a master, sleep soundly like true vanquishers, what could be more improper? Then we can think of the ruler of the three worlds here as being either the three worlds are the world above or above the earth, upon the earth, and below the earth, or just the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. You can think of it in those three ways, and they're referred to as worlds here really means that they're subject to disintegration. They're constantly subject to disintegration. Nothing stays. So here, sleep soundly like a true vanquisher is talking about those who have overcome their afflictions, like the Buddhas and the Arhats, or here referred to as foe destroyers.
Oh yeah. Oh, they Kanglan Jigden Sum Shara. Ngada Sidwa. Jigden Sum Lia Ngada Sud. Karsigura Sud. Kangur Rawado ko. Shivala Wangching get this cigar. Not as it is. The Chidas and get the Karisu, Chidas and get the Rawan Meba. Chiva the Pumbundor go at the Chidas. Chidak Tus, Namdil Cigar. Congo Chida, Shingi, Kansashi, Yubekajada, you may mention there. Rana Rawan Meba Chigo at the Chidas. Or Delia Chidas, Chiva Tagwam, Chida, Shinji, Chida Yabose, this water. And Rani Chida Jebo Mess, Koran Rangi comes from Sawa Sadin Kangalia, Koran Rangi Wangur Cheche, Chiva Taku Chigri, Kandu Koran Chigrimato, Shandaji Yapombuko and Nashiko and Chef Maris, Rani Chidas. Jebo Mess, Rizako, Chide Taku Wanga Chishu Kebu Nashire, Ko Wanga Chen Chiga. Dichi Jusia Wanja Chanapa, Shandal Kulma Chigmare, Korananga Kadula Chigresigora, Rani Chida Chebo Mes,
So when it says that whose Lord is death himself, ruler of the three worlds, then what is, when we say death, or the Lord of death, we're not talking about some separate being here. We're talking about the fact that our body and mind are subject to death, that we have to die. And therefore, we're under the power or the other power of death. And when it says Where does it say that in this verse? Usually it says himself. Oh, there it is. Yes, right. Lord, if those whose Lord is death himself, when it says death himself, it is talking about how himself is that it's death doesn't have somebody else kind of working for him to bring about our death. It does the work all on his own.
Shema rangi trawo be redu nombu kije ran teje yonge di soche tundar ben dundu be yeshin ba te tabu desu yora dengba tabu yeshin desu yora ene shuba da sheme she ran sombu je dejo yudan shito yu ran le ranwa ke yo marwa chida ko gadule male re sam tende yeshin desu yora de kasure yonge be kansa dege su yora yonge be kansa dege 시대지 벌써래 용의 넬신이로나 텔레마룬시에치요세 어디 용의 바베 시다 신지레드키제 소제가 소즈든도요 소소르랑아메 코카디 소제제 임바 어떤데 여신도 서서체네 치완도야 치와탄도도야다 아니 치와란 징메고바 계획슈 투바 삽소 마제베제 자존바다 산제나시 치달시 메고바나시제 니녜제 도나메베제 데나 텔레마룽바다 텔레국바 람바수요 마르송도.
So what's being said here is that then we can think of death as being like a butcher brandishing his sharp knife and being engaged in killing, because we're under the influence, we're constantly under the influence of death. We tend to think of, oh, I'm alive, and then, death will come and overpower me, something like that. But here the idea is that we're constantly under the influence of death. And so then if we're in that situation and then we are not mindful of death and just sort of take it easy and sleep soundly, like the Buddhas and the foe destroyers, somebody who is completely, perfectly abstained from the 10 non-virtuous deeds and have nothing to worry about. If we think like that, if we're sort of not paying attention to our death and taking it easy, and what could be more improper and reckless and foolish than this? Vasa.
Tarbada Sanji Koban Tobji Choda, Ra, and it's Mandala, Chiwa Tendon Doya, Chiwa Tendon Domatune, Tanda, Chiwala, Jigmekuba, Chinake, Mange, Chu number of Tumne Mesidilla, Kawaya go to you, take by Same, Samjeko, Giva Meva, Jigmekuba Chagudes.
So, when, if we can then instead of that, practice the teachings in such a way that we don't have to fear death at all, like the Buddhas and the Arhats, or if not that, at least to be fearless free of fear at the time of our death, so that we've engaged in, we've avoided harming others and engaged in abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds. Then at the time of death, whenever that may come, we should then practice in that way, so that we are free of any fear at the time of our death.
Oh yeah, tadile pechi dua peti chilam na kande dua.
Yeah, but
peti disi dua. penase chivalan jigni be sabso cheche machibe kapdila tambe chutum yapu chegu resya odi sabso chegu redese pena gebo jige lombo chiyo insarno gebo lombo chige o lombo tege ene ko gebo dan gebo korje kanga kundul tandu shubare shalaliya ene ko de gebo marme ki ngeme gebo to chana kol pasu kidu drumere kitchen road atin de ke chambusi gera o ko ke ta ya chebe na ko ke madare kene ko kondo saje ko gebo le midi ya wo mendu chi cheche gebo chema treje ko le so che jigba yore o di midi ko kadu ina tanga sabso ma che na gebo dan gebo lombo gebo tuje ngala ne ba che gre sam sabso chi do ase di na shin chiwa le tendo tare da chiwe sebe ngeme gube chu sabso che go re ese be shagdwa
so so there's a good example here on page 66 at the top there of the minister, and bearing in mind that what we're being enjoined to do by this verse is to abstain from the 10 non-virtuous deeds and be very conscientious about that. Then there was this minister who failed to please some of the king's torchbearers. In those days, the kings were greatly revered, and so they were led anywhere by people bearing torches. Then, so wanting to have him put to death, the torchbearers misled the king and told him something, deceived him and sort of told him something about the minister. And then the minister, suspecting that the king might kill him, remained attentive. We have to be like that. We have to be constantly attentive and attentive that death could come at any moment, and therefore we have to be prepared by abstaining from any of the 10 non-virtuous deeds and being ready.
Tendenge yomare keji ya sonte kadu chema che tende yomare samsade chiwa kadu yomayo sati ragwe metawarwa o keji ki yuro che tege sete trawe metawarwa kunzu nyindwa o dijila.
So here in the following verses, then mainly what's being covered is two topics. One is you can follow what I'm saying on page 305, the meditation on coarse impermanence, number 1 there, and then meditation on subtle impermanence. Coarse impermanence is being mindful of our own death, our individual death, and then subtle impermanence is this things being aware of things being in a constant state of flux. So then the following verses are going to be covering 5 different topics within the meditation on coarse impermanence.
Oh yeah. Somebody chiwan doji tadi samgudwa. Oh, somebody chiwan doji means it is samlaya yide mirungala ni ngoda somebody yurita somebody sigdwa. Ta kari samgura sangajo samlutanje jigden sumliya tene wangju chengeng chida de yore serwa. Yeja ngarune chedanda nganjule chiwan doji somebody yore wa samgura. Ko kadushi meji chiwalo rawa meba chengeng chida de yore de. Ina tandara chiwan doji somebody wa nga somebody de yorba. Shegwe kayo mare samgura. Ode somebody chiwan doji ke mare se somebody chiwe tundalba du yore se yora.
So the next verse is if you see on page 66, it's talking about this idea that where we have this kind of thought that it's really it's listed as an assertion, but it's talking about sort of the way we think, and so the Lord of Death rules the three worlds, and so fine, but he exists. I mean, death exists, but meanwhile we have life, and once we have life, then we're warding off death, and so then. What this topic covers is, well, life does not ward off death. It's part of the process of dying.
Oh yeah. That's somebody somebody or this somebody chon doji mares. Karesne kene Kevalaya Koran, the Keve Kenji Kashisigdoase. Ke the me Kiduza Sambushin Michani, that the Geshe Shiva to Julindoas. Keve Kenji Kashirwa. So somebody could Chive Juchi, somebody Chiva Meva Suyo Mare. Chive Juchi, Chival near Tangio.
So then we have a tendency to think, oh, I'm young, I'm gonna stay, I'm vital, we could say, or I'm living, but that is a misconception, in fact, because once we're born, then what it seems to be living, okay, is actually that we're being led towards. It's part of the process of dying, and it's what is leading us towards our death.
Oh yeah. Chiva jashir keju shinesigwa. Kiva Koran de ko chive tondale kebarese, kive kenji kashisigwara. So chiva chave cheto so kebarese. O de inde shawan roya ngangshen la se ke chane. Ene Nawada Gavala Soba or Tindri Kenji Shawan Droya, so Shawan Droya Angela. Udwa Tene Rala Rama Mebashe, and a Shangi Wangi Keji and Medover, Chidaga Tundu Droya Nangzu Changi, somebody last gora. He then gave your mares, then they gave your maresura. Caris Chive Dege. Somebody chive chawachi or mado, somebody younger, somebody there chawachi or marisgora. Shawan drawing Angela Chua Chawa Tanagi, somebody chawa minta rose. Desire.
So the verse here says, those who are born only to die and whose nature is to be driven appear to be in the act of dying and not in the act of living. Basically, what's being said here is that although we think of ourselves as living, there's no actual life itself is not such that it's somehow keeping us here or allowing us to stay. Life is instead the part of the process of dying from the moment we're born.
Bina say Mijiko says about Tinduada. Rulu Rapchi say in a cottage and Duguyana. Cocaji Madeva Cochive Cholpa near Rawama Bandogo to us. Dina Shingaranzo gave an ass on the KG Madene, Chive Cholpa near Pando de Yores.
So we're like sheep being led to the place of slaughter. It's each step that a sheep makes as it approaches that place is that they're getting closer to their death. So in each moment, then we're approaching our death, and it happens moment by moment.
This one. Oh yeah, they do go Benade. The longe to what is Kirable says to her. Kirable long, then Kirable long down. Me one be Thomas Samorne, 가는 직대에 내 주르바 되네 좀데 되네 니리시 죄셔 매바 치다 정도 로시도 미 왕부 개부다부데 고라 아메 거관에 방에네 착반에 송디스와라 미 왕부 통매 세모르네 가는 직대 내나 내주 아메 내라 내버주바 교 당불레 두스거라 되네 좀데 되네 니리시 죄셔 매바 치다 되네 좀데 아메 내라 고 당불레바네 송디 계지치고 신다 로아다 유마샤바제 고치다 정도 녀르녀르 되요레스거라
So there's one verse in the commentary here on page 66 from one of the life stories of Buddha Shakyamuni. And it says, heroic ruler, from the first night of entering an earthly womb from elsewhere, starting then, and day by day, one approaches death unceasingly. So there's never any moment from the very first moment of our conception that we're not getting closer and closer to our death.
Oh yeah, that the page do it's penasera. Kebo but the wang shabu shabu and the michilia kera nima dine chozu dinde chili ke de lemle malena ane ke bet segi is timle to gislava ko mede be kadu ina nizama kon do de mado de mare sigro o dina shingara zo do da deva da nyewa da kari chi yona ya ko keji chi de yo mar kon do de pe chi ya chole nyer do de chozu de zogo ngazo karse zo ba nashi du che de yo re son kare
so then there's this example of a messenger who, threatened by a fierce and merciless king that he will be killed unless he arrives at a certain time, keeps on the move and never stops. So this is an example of how we are. That in fact, every moment we're approaching whatever we're doing, whether we're standing or sitting or sleeping or eating or whatever we're doing, we're actually moving towards our death. So what's being said is there's no security in having the thought, I'm alive. We should be constantly cultivating a mindfulness of death, that we're impermanent, that death is coming.
Pomochi kochil ro sam challenge jogwa ro ko imbra ane koran konda de ngamu chi nye de yo imbra ngamu yo imbra nam gine nye de te mo jogwa ro sam de ngamu de chomja jab sha de ba chomja jab de ngamu de samne ta jogwa shin sam ko ya la sha de la sha de ko ro sha de che so mo rawa me ban ro ko chung ro ba di na shi ke rawa me ban ga ju chi da ton du yo de se pe
there's this example of a female ascetic known as a Parivara Jaka, and she was thinking, I have to get somewhere quickly, and then was jumping over this sleeping camel. The camel gets up, and she's is on the camel. So then she's under the power of this camel, and so then that's the same way for us. We're constantly under the other influence or the power of death.
This one. Dangan nibadi that you say niba chiwa medaba sambatelia karsere you say ngayu ba imba tangmaige. Oh da niba derida. Niba somebody yuri war samne music ba kakmane. Oh dandanga lo chudu re chinsare de lo chudu ma do te amare. Ta lo ja debe na dandanga lo internet kashu house te yorwa. Oh yuri bu te yesam. Tanda ko chiwala shegwa ke medu tradu chegwa medu samna jig mare sudwa.
So here we're continuing with this same on verse 3, we're continuing with this idea about being alive does not avert death, and one should not trust in just that. So part of those 5 topics about course impermanence. Here, the idea is, the thought that we have is, I'm 16 years old, and therefore usually people live to be 100, and, I've got 84 good years left. I should just enjoy myself and try to ward off death when it comes later on. So, Dadri-san.
No, yeah. Tandanga should have there do. Or this one, Tanda Lega Mambuya, Sama, Charche, and the Chema, and then Chidan Dog should do. Bear show grace, Tanda go some beturity, Jumate, some J, and Ravacha, your Maris.
So we're thinking that I have time, and then I can do my work, and then deal with death later on. And then the idea is that it's unreasonable to then think of our life in this way, that we have time.
That is all got rubber. Kegin, they do Tungudarsa. Kerang, Tanda Mechen and the Chinsar, the Lord Tundu Madu, Madu Chimaso, Tongshin say. Mao Shan to Tanda Mao Bala, Yurimbu de Tundule Shan to Yurimbu de Tesondako, Chinsar duty that Mao Ba de you doing it in Yamba me. Not de good among a year some Kyanyam Minyam Tarsem de Sour Jigbe or doing ras. Or cannot do somebody in a Chival and Jigbe Tar is your and the day you hear another man, some got chair Madoko. This Chival and Jigbe came to Chigba is
So the verse is saying you see the past as brief, you see the future differently. To think both equal or unequal is clearly like a cry of fear. Here, we tend to think of just a little time is gone. I still have a lot of time left in my for my life. And so then, whether the time in the past is less or equal to the future time, it's still clear that what we're involved in is being afraid of death, and therefore we're thinking in that way.
No, this is that you're on day you ma you since I didn't know about the Chime some Pang me, and it's Chula Majum Bechetavade, Rungumare, Seguardo. Pang me but you were Shindu Merites, Rangeting a long tare. She again a Mawade, Chida Kera Samboyena, she again Mangure Segura. Somebody came to the Paruli Chivikan and do this, somebody in the Chonsechi, the Danam Chivayanse, Panakang Daisho, the Danam Chivaya, Tado, Chunses, the Danam Chivaya, the Tado Chunses, Okosa. Chivikan Chidana Mambure, somebody came to the Chajan Saya to Yakoya Soba, the Palusuru Jala Soba, the Zango Chivikan and Drossig Resgora. The cannot do you long my using a use of Massa Bajatandaneco, Chujan Yagares, and such as Kumachigdo.
So this idea of seeing our past as brief and our future as long, then, is a reckless idea, and it's expressed in this precious Nagarjuna's precious garland, where he says, "The causes of death are many; those of staying alive are few, and these too can become the causes of death. Therefore, always practice." So then, here we have all these causes of death constantly, and we tend to think of the various things like food and living space and clothing and our environment and so forth as things that are helping to keep us alive, but they can easily turn into conditions that bring about our death. So then what we're being enjoined to do here is to practice the teachings.
This one? Oh, that is petty lapshanderwa. Petty. Takera de Tanda Tuzu Ringa Yusamedi, Tanda go Chival and Jigbet, and it came with the Chigba Reswara. Pena Lam Jigba, the Chabala Shugbe, Mishis, Lamgali Shana, Yubakuma Chagba, you were chitin, Mari Jagin Shana, you will do you Nasugara. Mishi, anyway, Chungun Benjiction to Takuma Yungri, me with some Shagi or Rako. Shigi or the coach, Shigman, the cage, capture Lula Shetanko. Do your rescue.
So there's a good example here of a man on a dangerous road who is afraid of robbers. He knows that there's robbers and robber bands that are on this road, but he pretends to not be afraid, by singing loudly and boldly some kind of song, but in fact his singing loudly in that way is a sign that he's afraid of death. So that's the same with us in thinking of our life and as being long in the future.
Oh yeah. Pena se taniba peniba sidwa teж lapshana. Peniba de pena tramse tramse to sigara. Tramse ko changda da tindeshira tangishira. Jaga lushana. Oh konzo ni shomba de kaji ni mezilinga tanje. Changsin da linga tinde tere sar. Tine konzo chokba de kaskal tang yusarwa. Tang dizani shoge kashe ngab ne lanji chinsare re. Ne kashe de yore ne te kangda de o di sangma kera. Sangma je de ma do je ngazo jari shoge tongi inda. Sangma sues mandugan de lavre. Tine konzo do ne soso chokba kaba tang ne titi chaje shenda de chayo mare. O di karjen majare se tinge chokba mare konzo de chokba re slavre. O di ne shiko misawa yemba nyamba re de. Da koran samlo ko ding he misawa re sangma di mishenda re chokba re sambare shere. Se tenda ko tri da roda kangal chaba che yo mare shere. O di ne shikera nga duju tanda de manga ye ndosar de nyonga ye se nyamba de menyamba samlo ta ya de tenda tiri es gore. O di de chibare es.
So then there's the second example of the Brahmins who are used to being very clean, right? It's a caste in India, and they're staying in this boarding house, I guess you could say, and then as the custom was in those days, well, no, not in particular the custom, but anyway, what they did is to to defecate in different parts of the room where they were staying, and then to leave. And the caretaker got wind of this and said, if you don't remove your excrement, you louts, and you better do it now or I'll give you a thrashing. And so then they came back to the room, and they couldn't remove the excrement of others. They had to find their own excrement and remove that, but they wouldn't touch anybody. So thinking that their own is cleaner and where others is not, then is thinking that they're unequal, right? Whereas they're all equally filthy, and so it's the same as having this idea that somehow the future is long, and my future is long, and the past is just short, and so I have plenty of time, something like that.
Di tende de je du do pela ngara jungan ji yorba nge se ra nge yimba de kanga ya re se ra ngam jos shenda maga jino konjo ya go maris kanga du sha se do ne she so ge yimba sha ne mizawa la ko chang ma ji do 죽버리지 교비 다디죠. 미사발에 상마치기ora 셰키바케 요마라. 그래서 내에서 뭔지 숙사자라 셰키바케 요마라.
So, in fact, we have this same kind of feeling. It's not just the Brahmins that something that's mine. Once we sort of attach the idea of this is mine, then we think of it as somehow cleaner or better than others. And so then we have this kind of a similar kind of discrimination, or not seeing the equality, that it's all just filth.
Oh yeah, that is Jelia. The devastation do that. Shandala, that didn't do that castle. Oh, Chiva did some tomorrow, Chiva did some tomorrow, this on that. I think I done the Shake your Maria Sambuda. Chiva could you tomorrow in Betela Rambashi, Trapachame, somebody in Asura. Oh, that is Digmaris, Chiva tomorrow in a social Chiva. Chiva de so Chiva look at Pengi Marwa. Shandala Chitunche, Killa Chiva and Jigmenase, Chilla Nurga, Detrado, Kone Dunge, Geguramse. Chiva de Simjan Shella, and it tomorrow you be Jigba Maris, Najigu Maris Ambarwa. Kansa Chilla Chidagi never came by the Shella Tona, Dunge Shekula, Tona, Dunge Julo, Minjuani. Chibu de Trado Gicone, Tunge Joa Yinla, Chidala, Trado Gicone, Tunge Geber Jubatini Meride, Rango Tunge, that is Yora. Shandala, Chidu Chiva de Kangal, Karanga, Shegua Karanga, Chibu Maris, and Giora. Or Ding Kera Gay, Tangi Maris, Ora, Killa Chi and Jigmana, Chilla Nerga, Tetradose. Me Shandachilia Chi, Trado Yavena. Kola Yaga Johnson, Mandibada, Kola social Dubachon, Kola Majuna, Dima Sosa, Kola Dubachon Ota, Kola Johnson, Chibade Samsa Tengris Ora, Tado Wange. Kola Dubachon, Benakia, Laga Mandibache, Nala Cheva Japs, Kola Jamaso Samna, Kotado Kawing Marwa, Ujelia Ota, Kola Cheva Japs Ota, Samyako. Was young Duda. You tried to one bit of oh, Jesus, Dick, I got you again, Nikara Pengas, Yora. Till a Trado Jackie or Maravas, Yora.
So then, here, the idea is that the next person is that this is the one that says inappropriateness of not fearing death because it is common to all, and so then we feel that that death, because everybody has to undergo death, and there's no reason for us just on our own to fear it, and so then. This is also a very unreasonable position to take. The verse says, since death is common to others too, you have no fear of it. Does jealousy cause suffering when only one is harmed? So, if you, the idea here is that when somebody, if we're concerned about death, then if then somebody else should die, then we sort of feel, oh, it wasn't me, and so then you're sort of happy that it wasn't me. But the suffering that you undergo, okay, is in this case is not caused by death, but caused by jealousy.
Chive dunge deka marisera chado wange. Kebu kole chayjab rali jo kole majab no ko chado yongora. Kole chayjab sunawata dis subject yongora. Ki chado wange rawa. Chado ke wange rawa. Oh, de chiva de ni ko kole chunsu ngale chunsam chado wange tinde yongay yo marisera. Kena nyawali kenge manga yona. Susu nyawali kibe dunge mebe chaya ke yo mara. Odina shiresa.
Then so then it's by if somebody else undergoes suffering and we're not harmed, then then we it's through only with the only suffering we see from the Lord of Death there is caused by our jealousy. But if it's just like if instead all of us, all of those we know are, all of our friends then are in, as it says here in the last part, if all of us are in hell together, then it will not lessen the suffering.
Yes, right. Well, that's somebody that show me that what I made up somebody now even somebody that. Now that Kawala Chudabla Tene, Chivala Miji, Pasatako, Chivala Young Nagade, Eneco Casaricado, Mangurite, Keva Chudab, nowadays mess Soya Yority, Shagaka Yoma, some Nasi Yora. Okay, now that Gawa maybe Chiva Mijun says, Teda. Soje Chunse Chusube, Chola Miji, Soshena, Tidigma Resora. Ne Kawa Soja Desen, Nele Choya Yore, Keva de Letos, subject Kalaya Busa Chichen, Soetos Yores Yora. Teda like you Mijina, Tisozako, Cholia, Nagure, Kegure, Tezu, Soya Yore, Chola Shegua Yomare Senas Yora. Cheba Chima Chor Mebe, Che Sour Delan Gypsy. Cheba Chima de Chiva Delia, Tizu Lepsona, Soya Yomar Vasugore. Now the Gable Tos Soya Yugiri, Chiva de Lepsona, Chimago, Soya Mavasugora. Cheba Chima Chor Mebe, Che Sour Telan Gypsy, Nebardo, Chival Metapal and Gini, Kevatuko Res on Gedwa.
So this next verse is one of the third one of the 5 topics about course impermanence, where it's inappropriate of not fearing death because of treatments for sickness and aging. Here we feel that death does not occur without sickness and aging, and as these can be remedied by medical treatment and taking essential nutrients, then we don't have anything. We don't have to fear death. Then it says here in the verse, then sickness can be cured and aging treated. Therefore, you do not fear them. Yet there is no cure for the last ordeal. Thus, obviously, you fear it, as what do you say? Sickness is treatable, and aging can be helped some, but you don't fear them for that reason. So then, but death itself then has no real cure. So therefore, you're obviously very afraid of death.
Oh yeah, dandele page doa. Pone jebe lumbushira. Jebe lumbushi jebe da mandine kobe jari jab chimbere. Tene jebe lumbushin da stanza ta ko se shesere ko ma jab sere chine. Ko tabge sheshe ko nyambate te chinde dure. Shanda tena. Jebe ko ran ba do so ne ne ko nyambate de yo marwa. O dine shi chwa de lum dok ke yo mar. Ka da na wala to so shi ja yo.
So there's a good example of this here. Cites that when a king's robes were ruined, a plea. Oh no, sorry. A king's rebellious minister bribed some envoys who had been sent from the king. That means, but when the king himself went to war, there was no remedy. So it's the same with aging and sickness. Okay, we might be able to do something about them, but once death comes, then we can't do anything.
Yes, right. Oh yeah, tangani deliles da kasira. Chua kunje chumowa yenshi musumdo tonwe chiwala jigobane sose jo namjon do mebe chua yemeje te darang yeba masimbe minji sushi ase. Chua yoda yoade chua gadu juma ju tande tende yo marwa. O de sonze jiga dadi shiba dereda. O chua metaba sambala tenze nga yubene shiba dere. Namji ngeba mebe chua la minji so nyamna sigara. Chita chigri de gadu chimbachi tende yo mar de sonze tande shego yake menduse. Sambene de rigi mare sigwa. Chiva Kundi Timo Yesh, Musum de Tonga, Chival and Jigu. Chiva de Kanga Musum de Tonga, Chival and Jigu Reswara. Namjing Ebachando Maton and Jig Meguba Kakbasha, Tatambo de Chiva Kundi, Timo Yesh, Musum de Tonga, Chival and Jigu Badereda. Sosiko Namjan Dodo, maybe Chiva Yemege, Tedar Neba, Masimbe Minji Soshanas, Narazu Tabuge. Chevata Yungurita, Tanda, Duzu Yungurisi, Tending to Gumedua. This was a shake Maris, some nas, didn't Maris. Saber Java Chunam Darse, Sayag Chuchiana, Raluchina. Cheva Quindi Timushes, Saja Ralu Mabuchi, Segi Segi Sajana, Timu to Ganga Segi, Musum the Tonde Yorno. Shaya, Cheva Nangurna, Kela Chida Chimmy Jesse, Shandazo, Robachi, or a teacher, Sosa and Yambe radio or a tis on there. Timo Yena Chidala, Jimmy Jid in Jigba Rigorese, Cheval and Jigna, and Machikondo, Chevan Doyada, Chivas in Jigmegua Sowodese.
So, this is verse 6, which is beginning of the fourth topic. And here, what's being covered is the need to fear death because of being common to all and directly visible. Here, we might have this feeling that though death will come and common beings cannot avert it, one does not fear it because at present one has no certain knowledge of it. There's an idea that that because of death's uncertainty as to when it's going to come, then we can't really know about death, so why should we fear it? Then the verse is addressing, making the assertion that it's not difficult to know death. Like cattle intended for slaughter, death is common to all. Moreover, when you see others die, why do you not fear the Lord of death? So it's something common to, it might be common, but then because it is common, then we can have some knowledge of it.
Tangiba Namching Yeme, Gary Tandani, do what Tambut shares us one. Namjing Yeme, Tonga, and Jig Megoba, somebody dig my residue. Oh, Tula Neba, maybe share Tada Yam to Semna. Kaduchi Majing Eva Medo, not under Dangere, some Terendu Sane, Degre, some Tardak by Yam to Semba Chenanis Gora. Namshi do not Chida, Kela never chiva, doing a major Kiran Chida, never Chisona, and Kiran Gavaki, Net Andane, and each one dog and the children and Jimmy Guva should do Dambichu to Bade, and power of a show or substitute with Esuda.
So this is the second part of this one section, the fourth section, where it's the extreme inappropriateness of not fearing death because of the time of one's death is uncertain, and then it's refuting unnecessariness of fear because a definite time of death is not foreseen. So it's unreasonable to doubt the need for such great concern to avert death on the grounds that, though obvious, the time of one's death is uncertain. If you read the verse, because the time is uncertain, you think that you are eternal. One day the Lord of Death will do you injury. So we have to always be conscientious and to cultivate avoiding cultivate virtue by abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds and being conscientious, or just always being conscious or mindful of death.
That's right.
Indeed,
Oh, that the page do I pay the Shunju the door. Then a symbol Kashas Lumbachil Tangi made Tum Dishida. Lumbachil called symbol Wang Chambushi Sarado. 미상게 미셔상게지 근데 그 정발이 그런 도리 제그 사회를 도우요래 방아지 코스는 누구 매세세요 말고 도우요라 디신도스가 데데 찍바데스도 심부가게 사례라 유디 미고 림진 좋아신도 개와 담지 치원 유리 개 친제들 거 가르치는 마시네 치월이 안 돼야 타슈사데스가
So then the example there is of ogre Bagasu who would sort of be on the rounds to devour people one by one, and they would be devoured. He had a route, I guess, that he went, and people would be devoured one by one on this route. So basically, we're all who are born then will have to die. This is an example of death.
ne paula jigbe jume ba mi pawo to ya chiwale jigmare se dharma kona la jigba chigre se yora o te so de da ko tambo dharma kona la chiwen jigba jeba mite de se do dere chiwara nieme je chiwen jigba ne dharma kona la mikawa jeba yenje pawo namla ne ningu da jagba jube chedo yungro sene ba lela babja nyam ngawa mebe chiwala minjik so shine mi logo chunju to the chiwala shigrese pawo to the shigmarese karisa mandam dokona hina lula trepona sena kajene chesam kon dropping to as shiwala jigme do as dharma kona jigri me mi pawo to jigmar te so nga jigme go samna se wara jigmarese do
so then this next verse, the 8th one, is talking about refuting that death does not cause the brave to fear. So, unfeasibility of only cowards fearing death. So, there's a feeling that though death is certain here, fear of death arouses aversion only in the cowardly, while the brave, to gain reward and honor, are undaunted, even when sharp weapons rain down on their bodies in battle. Thus, they do not fear death.
This one. That is Mao by Tashin Sudo. Mao by the Yunguri, Keja Yunguri, Pecha Yunguri, some Kosa Yunguri, some Tilatanis. Samba Saba minor Sosa said, Samba Saba, like Samlamata Chess. Dani Son, this Sosa Tomba. So penjo young tendal penjo young koran de song ni shina shi se ni penjo ka chore so song sha na shi re cha la dani song la dani ne namjun de ba su shi ma sa so penjo young tendal ma ba ke da young tendal so le ta sha ni china ane ti ko namjun de be mi re su se to ko ma re su ra namjun de ba su shi ma sa o dire
so here if the verse says, if you consider future goals but not your waning life, who would call intelligence such selling of yourself? So for the sake of getting higher position or rewards and honor and so forth, then a person is, being quote unquote brave and neglecting their waning life, not paying attention to that. So, who would call that intelligent? It would be like selling yourself in order to get these higher rewards.
chiwala music bada chiwan dogbe chidu chamber chai ningulia ne chaba machi sungdo o ti chameru e petelia pena chongbe bu chande mangbu cheshi ta de mala du ma do chongbe bu ji de mangbu peme mangbu le de wa yong chi sigdo ko par chakba kawa janja ma do ko chu ka bu ma dang ge de sigora ane chema ko sulo ko ma ko ta du su chi ma ko che ko tama pangban yu gu was pechik tendes doa pe niba de tramsi chile pusum doa tramsi chile pusum ye bache 아니 무기 중하자 무기하고로 칼라사야마 무기 중하자 무기 중에 되려 아니 부지 종거래서 군이 밤만 이렇게 깨지쳐도 부지 종샤나네 칼라 용거래서 아니 되게하고 되는 가지고 여기 있어도 부디 종간도 아니 부처와대 바바되게 주래 부처와대가 아마되게 탐바래 아니 부바르바되가 어다 부처와 바바고도 중아 아마고도 당하게 볼 종배에서 건도샤라 그 코란 안긴 좋아다 집어래서
So there's two examples that illustrate this, where a merchant's son is attached so much in his affairs with others, and even though they don't reciprocate, and he's soon ruined by his merrymaking and quarreling of his affairs. He had no thought of his own of himself, or looking at himself. Then what his situation was. So then, and then a Brahmin had 3 sons, and so there was a time of famine, and the parents decided they would sell off one son. So then a king's son heard about it and asked for the boy. Since the father was holding on to the oldest and the mother was holding on to the youngest, then the middle one just sort of said, well, since I am being sold, take me. Which is like selling oneself. It's just like it was that he was just sort of making this assumption, right? It wasn't true that they were going to sell him necessarily, but that's the way he saw it. So I guess we could end right there, as the time is up.